The wine glass exploded against the marble floor as Marcus Blackwood's hand cracked across his wife's face. The sound echoed to the five-star restaurant like a gunshot. Sarah's head snapped to the side, her hand flying to her cheek as crimson liquid splashed across her white maternity dress. "You worthless piece of trash!" Marcus roared, his voice carrying over the sudden silence. Every conversation died. Every fork stopped mid-bite. "Your pathetic family is ruining everything I've built." Sarah's legs trembled as she pressed both hands to her swollen belly. 7 months pregnant, and she could barely keep her balance. Tears streamed down her face, mixing with the wine that dripped from her hair. "Marcus, please," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Not here. Not in front of everyone. I don't care who sees." He grabbed her wrist so hard she gasped. "You and your nobody family need to learn your place." The maitre d' stepped forward, his face pale. "Sir, perhaps we should stay out of this." Marcus shoved the man back. "This is between me and my mistake of a wife." Phone cameras started rising throughout the dining room. Whispers spread like wildfire. Sarah could feel dozens of eyes burning into her skin. The shame was suffocating. 3 tables away, Judge William Hartwell set down his water glass with deliberate calm. His weathered hands didn't shake. His expression didn't change. But his steel-gray eyes never left Marcus's face as the younger man continued his tirade. "Your uncle thinks he's so important with his little government job." Marcus spat, tightening his grip on Sarah's arm. "Well, I've got news for you. Money talks louder than whatever pathetic connections your family thinks they have." Sarah tried to pull away, but Marcus yanked her closer. The sudden movement made her stumble, and she almost fell. A woman at the next table gasped and covered her mouth. "Let go of me," Sarah managed, her voice stronger now despite the tears. "You're hurting the baby." Marcus laughed, cold and cruel. "The baby? You mean the anchor you used to trap me? Maybe this little accident would solve both our problems." The restaurant erupted in shocked murmurs. Someone dropped silverware. A chair scraped against the floor as another diner stood up, clearly disturbed by what they were witnessing. Judge Hartwell folded his napkin with precise movements. He'd heard enough, seen enough. After 40 years on the bench, he knew evil when he saw it. And Marcus Blackwood was about to learn the hardest lesson of his privileged life. "You want to know what your real problem is?" Marcus continued, his face inches from Sarah's. "You actually thought you mattered. You thought marry me made you special. But you're still the same trailer trash you've always been." Sarah's knees buckled. The pain in her chest felt worse than the sting on her cheek. This was the man she'd loved, the man she'd married, the father of her unborn child. "I should have listened to my lawyers from the beginning," Marcus said, finally releasing her arm. "A prenup wasn't enough. I should have never let someone like you into my world." Judge Hartwell stood slowly, his 6-foot frame commanding attention even in the crowded restaurant. He moved toward the scene with the measured pace of a man who'd spent decades delivering justice. His expensive suit was immaculate. His presence was undeniable. Marcus noticed the older man approaching and sneered. "Great. Another hero. Let me guess. You think you're going to save the day?" "I think," Judge Hartwell said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority, "that you've said quite enough." "And who exactly are you?" Marcus demanded, puffing out his chest. Another one of her pathetic relatives? Sarah's eyes widened as she recognized her uncle. She hadn't seen him enter, hadn't known he was there. But now, seeing him stand between her and Marcus, she felt the first spark of hope she'd had in months. "My name," the judge said, extending his hand to help Sarah stand, "is William Hartwell." Marcus laughed, dismissively. "Never heard of you. And I know everyone worth knowing in this city." Judge Hartwell's lips curved into the slightest smile as he gently steadied his pregnant niece. "I'm sure you do, Mr. Blackwood. I'm sure you do." The way he said Marcus's name made several nearby diners look up with recognition. They knew that voice. They knew that calm, measured tone that had sentenced criminals and changed lives for decades. But Marcus was too drunk on his own arrogance to notice. too blinded by rage to see the trap closing around him. "Well, William," Marcus said with mock politeness, "why don't you mind your own business and let me handle my wife?" Judge Hartwell helped Sarah into a chair, his movements gentle and protective. Around them, phone cameras captured every second. The judge knew they were recording. He was counting on it. "She's not your property," he said simply. Marcus's face turned red. "She's my wife, and you're nobody, just another bottom feeder from her worthless family." The judge said nothing more. He simply memorized every word, every gesture, every witness. In his mind, he was already building the case that would destroy Marcus Blackwood piece by piece. But Marcus wasn't finished. As sirens wailed in the distance, someone had finally called the police. He leaned down towards Sarah one last time. "This isn't over," he hissed. "You'll regret embarrassing me like this. Both of you." Judge Hartwell's eyes hardened as he watched his niece's husband walk away, leaving her bleeding and broken in front of 50 strangers. Marcus had no idea that the man he just threatened controlled the very courts where his fate would be decided. The restaurant door chimed as Victoria Sterling strutted in, her red heels clicking against the marble floor like gunshots. Her tight black dress hugged every curve. Her perfectly styled blonde hair caught the chandelier light. She moved through the frozen crowd like she owned the place. "Marcus, darling," she called out, her voice sweet as poison honey. "Sorry I'm late. Traffic was absolutely dreadful." Sarah looked up from her chair, wine still dripping from her dress, and felt her world tilt sideways. Victoria, Marcus's 23-year-old secretary, the woman who'd been working late with him every night for months. Marcus straightened his tie and smiled for the first time all evening. Victoria, perfect timing, as always. She glided over and wrapped her manicured hands around his arm, pressing herself against him. The entire restaurant watched in horrified fascination as she completely ignored Sarah's existence. "I hope I didn't miss anything important," Victoria purred, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Just taking out the trash," Marcus said, glancing down at Sarah with disgust. Judge Hartwell's jaw tightened as he watched the scene unfold. He'd seen cruelty in his courtroom, but this public humiliation was something else entirely. His niece sat trembling, one hand on her swollen belly, while her husband flaunted his affair in front of 50 witnesses. Victoria finally looked down at Sarah, her blue eyes sparkling with malice. "Oh my, what happened here? Did someone have a little accident?" "Nothing that matters," Marcus said, pulling Victoria closer. "Sarah was just leaving." "Actually," Victoria said, her voice dripping with fake concern, "shouldn't someone help the poor thing? She looks positively tragic." Phones continued recording from every angle. The whispers grew louder. A waiter hurried over with towels, but no one knew where to look or what to do. Sarah tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't support her. The emotional shock mixed with her pregnancy made everything feel unreal. This couldn't be happening. Not like this. Not in front of all these people. "I have an announcement to make," Marcus said, his voice carrying across the silent restaurant. "Since we're all here together, this seems like the perfect opportunity." Judge Hartwell stepped closer to Sarah, his protective instincts on high alert. Whatever was coming next, he could see it in Marcus's eyes. It was going to be devastating. Marcus cleared his throat like he was about to give a business presentation. "Victoria and I have been seeing each other for 8 months now. And unlike my current arrangement," he gestured dismissively at Sarah, "this relationship actually means something." Victoria giggled and held up her left hand. A massive diamond ring sparkled on her finger. "We're engaged." The gasps echoed through the restaurant. Someone dropped a glass. A woman at the corner table whispered, "Oh my God," loud enough for everyone to hear. Sarah felt like she was drowning. 8 months. Victoria had been wearing that ring for God knows how long, and Sarah had never noticed. She'd been so focused on her pregnancy, so trusting, so stupid. "But that's not the best part," Marcus continued, grinning like a predator. "Victoria is also pregnant, 3 months along. And this time, it's a child I actually want." Before we dive deeper into this painful journey, take a moment to subscribe for more heartbreaking stories like this. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Victoria placed her free hand on her still flat stomach and smiled triumphantly. "We're having a boy," she announced. Marcus's real heir. Sarah's vision blurred. The words hit her like physical blows. Real heir, as if their baby, was worthless. "So you see," Marcus said, looking directly at Sarah, "this marriage was always temporary, a business arrangement that served its purpose. But now I have what I actually need, a woman who understands her place, and a child who'll actually carry on my legacy." Judge Hartwell had heard enough. 40 years of maintaining judicial restraint was the only thing keeping him from destroying Marcus Blackwood with his bare hands. But he knew patience would serve better than violence. Justice would come. Sarah finally found her voice. "The baby I'm carrying is yours too, Marcus. Your child. How can you say these things?" Victoria laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Honey, he never wanted that baby. He told me from the beginning it was just an accident, a mistake he was stuck dealing with." "That's not true," Sarah whispered, but even as she said it, she remembered all the times Marcus had seemed distant during her pregnancy. All the late nights, all the business trips, all the signs she'd ignored. "It's completely true," Marcus said coldly. "I was trapped by one careless night, and I've regretted it every day since. But now I'm free to live the life I actually want." A police officer finally pushed through the crowd, having been called when the commotion started. "Is there a problem here?" "No problem at all, officer," Marcus said smoothly. "Just a domestic situation that's been resolved. My wife was just leaving." The officer looked at Sarah, still sitting in the wine-stained chair, tears streaming down her face. "Ma'am, do you need medical attention, or would you like to press charges for assault?" Sarah looked up at her uncle, then at Marcus and Victoria standing together like some twisted happy couple. The entire restaurant was watching, waiting for her response. She started, then stopped. The pain in her chest was suffocating. The humiliation was complete, but Judge Hartwell placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "We'll be filing charges," he said quietly, along with several other complaints. Marcus laughed dismissively. "Against me? With what lawyer? Sarah can't afford a real attorney, and neither can her pathetic family." Judge Hartwell smiled again, that same cold expression that had terrified criminals for decades. "We'll manage, Mr. Blackwood. I assure you we'll manage just fine." Something in his tone made Victoria shift uncomfortably. For the first time since entering, she looked uncertain. But Marcus was too drunk on victory to notice. He had everything he wanted, his mistress, his heir, and his wife publicly humiliated beyond repair. He had no idea that the man standing beside Sarah controlled the very system that was about to destroy him. The police officer looked between Marcus and the distinguished older man who'd just spoken. Something about Judge Hartwell's presence commanded immediate respect. His silver hair was perfectly styled. His expensive suit was immaculate. His voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "And you are?" the officer asked respectfully. "William Hartwell," the judge said simply, helping Sarah to her feet with gentle hands. "This is my niece." Marcus scoffed, still basking in his victory over Sarah. "Your niece married well above her station. Old man, maybe you should teach her some gratitude." Judge Hartwell said nothing. He simply steadied Sarah as she swayed on her feet, wine still dripping from her maternity dress. Around them, the crowd pressed closer, phone still recording every word. "Marcus," Victoria whispered, tugging on his arm. "Maybe we should just go. This is getting messy." "Nonsense," Marcus declared, puffing out his chest. "I want everyone to see exactly what happens when people from Sarah's background try to embarrass me." The judge's steel-gray eyes never left Marcus's face. He memorized every cruel word, every dismissive gesture. In his mind, he was already building a case that would destroy this arrogant man piece by piece. "You know what your problem is, William?" Marcus continued, emboldened by the judge's silence. "You think family loyalty means something. But money talks louder than blood." Sarah gripped her uncle's arm, trembling. She wanted to tell Marcus who he was really speaking to, but her uncle's calm presence told her to wait, to trust him. I've worked too hard building my empire to let trailer trash drag me down, Marcus said, gesturing broadly at the watching crowd. Sarah thought she could trap me with a pregnancy, but all she did was waste 9 months of my life. The police officer shifted uncomfortably. Sir, maybe you should consider— Consider what? Marcus snapped. Being polite to people who don't matter? I don't think so. Judge Hartwell guided Sarah toward the exit. His movements deliberate and protective. Every step was calculated. Every witness was noted. 40 years on the bench had taught him that patience was more powerful than rage. Running away already? Marcus called out mockingly. That's what I'd expect from Sarah's family. No backbone. No fight. Victoria giggled nervously, but her laughter sounded forced now. Something about the older man's composure was unsettling. Most people either cower before Marcus or fought back. This man just absorbed everything. You want to know the truth about your precious niece? Marcus shouted as they reached the door. She's been nothing but a burden from day one. Pathetic, weak, worthless. Judge Hartwell paused at the threshold. For just a moment, his mask slipped. The fury in his eyes could have melted steel. But then he composed himself, turned, and spoke in a voice that carried across the entire restaurant. Mr. Blackwood, he said quietly, I want you to remember this moment. Remember every word you said tonight. Remember every witness in this room. Something in his tone made the entire crowd fall silent. Even Marcus stopped mid-sneer. Because I promise you, the judge continued, his voice never rising above a conversational level, everything you've done here tonight will matter very soon. Marcus laughed, but it sounded hollow now. Is that supposed to be a threat? From you. Not a threat, Judge Hartwell said, helping Sarah through the door. A guarantee. As they stepped into the cool evening air, Sarah finally collapsed against her uncle's shoulder. The sobs came in waves, months of suppressed pain pouring out all at once. Uncle William, she whispered, I'm so sorry you had to see that. I'm so ashamed. You have nothing to be ashamed of, he said firmly, flagging down a taxi. But Marcus Blackwood is about to learn what shame really feels like. Inside the restaurant, Marcus was already celebrating his victory. He ordered the most expensive bottle of champagne and toasted with Victoria, while the other diners whispered among themselves. The viral videos were already spreading across social media. Did you see how they just ran away? Marcus laughed, pulling Victoria onto his lap. That's what happens when people forget their place. Victoria forced a smile, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. The way that older man had looked at Marcus, it was like watching a predator study its prey. Maybe we should have been more discreet, she whispered. Discreet? Marcus scoffed. I want everyone to know I'm done with that mistake of a marriage. The whole city can watch me move on with my life. Neither of them noticed the waiter in the corner, discreetly speaking into his phone, or the manager, frantically making calls to the restaurant's legal team, or the other diners, some of whom were beginning to recognize the name William Hartwell and realizing exactly who had just witnessed Marcus's tirade. Judge Hartwell helped Sarah into the taxi, his mind already 3 steps ahead. By morning, Marcus Blackwood would discover that humiliating the wrong family could cost everything. The young man had just destroyed his own life, and he was too arrogant to realize it. Where to? The taxi driver asked. The hospital, Judge Hartwell said, noticing Sarah's pale complexion and labored breathing. And then we make some very important phone calls. As the taxi pulled away, Marcus's laughter echoed from the restaurant behind them. He had no idea that his celebration was about to become a funeral for everything he'd ever built. The hunt had begun, and Judge William Hartwell never lost. The emergency room doors slammed open as paramedics rushed Sarah through the sterile corridors. Her face was pale as paper, and her breathing came in short, panicked gasps. The stress from the restaurant had sent her body into early contractions. 7 months pregnant. Judge Hartwell told the attending physician, his voice steady despite the chaos. She was assaulted by her husband in public, slapped across the face, grabbed forcefully. Dr. Martinez nodded grimly, immediately ordering an ultrasound. We need to check the baby's vitals. Trauma like this can trigger premature labor or cause placental abruption. Sarah gripped her uncle's hand as they wheeled her into the examination room. Tears streamed down her face, but now they weren't just from humiliation. They were from terror. What if something happens to the baby? What if Marcus was right and this is all my fault? None of this is your fault. Judge Hartwell said firmly, "Focus on staying calm. Your daughter needs you to be strong right now." The ultrasound technician spread cold gel across Sarah's swollen belly. The room filled with the rapid rhythm of a tiny heartbeat, strong and defiant despite everything that had happened. "The baby's heart rate is elevated but stable," Dr. Martinez announced with relief. "However, you're having contractions. We need to keep you overnight for monitoring." As the medical team worked to stabilize Sarah, Judge Hartwell stepped into the hallway and pulled out his phone. His first call was to his chambers, where his trusted clerk answered immediately despite the late hour. "Patricia, I need emergency research on Marcus Blackwood, CEO of Blackwood Industries," he said quietly. "Financial records, business permits, tax filings, employee complaints, everything. And I need it by morning." His second call was to District Attorney Rebecca Chen, an old friend who owed her career to cases they'd worked together. "William, it's past midnight. What's wrong?" "Rebecca, I need a favor. My niece was publicly assaulted tonight, and there's video evidence. But I suspect there's much more underneath. Can you open a preliminary investigation into her husband's business practices?" "Of course. Send me what you have." Judge Hartwell was ending his third call when the elevator doors opened with a sharp ding. Marcus stumbled out, clearly drunk, with Victoria clinging to his arm for support. They were both laughing like they'd just left a comedy show. "I can't believe she actually fainted," Victoria giggled, her voice echoing to the quiet hospital corridor. "So dramatic, like something out of soap opera." "Sarah always was good at playing the victim," Marcus slurred, nearly tripping over his own feet. "Probably faking the whole thing for attention." Judge Hartwell pressed himself against the wall near the nurse's station, hidden behind a pillar. A young nurse named Jennifer looked up from her charts, immediately recognizing the drunk man making a scene. "Excuse me, sir," Jennifer said professionally. "Visiting hours are over, and you appear to be intoxicated. I'll have to ask you to leave." Marcus waved her off dismissively. "I'm Marcus Blackwood. This is my hospital now. I donated $2 million to your cardiac wing. That doesn't give you the right to what? Visit my wife." Marcus laughed cruelly. "Don't worry. I'm not planning to stay long. Just want to make sure she's not faking this whole emergency." Victoria pressed closer to him, her voice carrying clearly down the hallway. "You said earlier that it might be better if she lost the baby. Were you serious?" Marcus's response made Judge Hartwell's blood run cold. "Dead serious. The divorce will be so much cleaner without a kid involved. Less custody drama, less child support, less connection to her pathetic family." Jennifer's pen stopped moving. She glanced around quickly, then discreetly activated the voice recording app on her phone, placed it behind her computer monitor. "But what if she doesn't lose it?" Victoria pressed. "Well, the baby's fine." Marcus shrugged, swaying slightly. "Then we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But honestly, after the stress I put her through tonight, I'd be shocked if that kid survives." "Marcus," Victoria whispered, suddenly seeming more sober. "That sounds really bad. Maybe we shouldn't talk about this here." "Who cares?" Marcus said loudly. "It's not like anyone here matters. They're all just hospital workers. They can't do anything to me." Jennifer's hands shook as she continued recording. In 12 years of nursing, she never heard anyone speak so callously about their own child's potential death. Judge Hartwell stepped out from behind a pillar, his face a mask of controlled fury. "Mr. Blackwood." Marcus spun around, nearly falling over. When he saw who had spoken, his drunken confidence wavered slightly. "Oh, it's you again. I thought you might want to know that your wife is stable," the judge said calmly. "The baby is fine. Strong heartbeat. Fighting spirit. Just like her mother. Wonderful," Marcus said sarcastically. "Another bill for me to pay." Victoria tugged on his sleeve. "Marcus, we should go." You're drunk, and this looks bad. But Marcus was too far gone to listen. You know what? I'm glad this happened. Now everyone can see what Sarah really is, a weak, pathetic woman who can't handle the real world. Jennifer looked up. From her desk, her recording app still running. Sir, I'm going to have to call security if you don't lower your voice. You're disturbing our patients. Marcus turned toward her with a sneer. And I'm going to have you fired if you don't mind your own business. Do you know who I am? Yes, sir, Jennifer said quietly. I know exactly who you are. Something in her tone made Victoria grab Marcus's arm more forcefully. We're leaving. Now. As they stumbled back toward the elevator, Marcus called out one final taunt. Tell Sarah I'll see her in divorce court. And tell her not to expect any mercy. The elevator doors closed on his laughter, leaving the hallway in shocked silence. Judge Hartwell approached Jennifer's desk, his expression grim. Nurse, I hope you understand the importance of what you just witnessed. Jennifer held up her phone. The recording app's still active. Every word, Your Honor. I recognized your voice from the courthouse when I served jury duty last year. Judge Hartwell's smile was sharp as a blade. Then you understand that justice is coming for Mr. Blackwood sooner than he thinks. As he walked back toward Sarah's room, his phone buzzed with the first of what will be dozens of devastating reports about Marcus Blackwood's business empire. The hunt was about to become a slaughter. Marcus woke up to his phone, buzzing like an angry hornet. The sunlight streaming through his penthouse windows felt like daggers in his skull. Victoria lay beside him, still wearing last night's dress, mascara smeared across her face. What the hell? He groaned, squinting at his phone screen. 17 missed calls from his lawyer, 23 from his CFO, 41 from his board of directors. The first text message made his blood freeze. All company accounts frozen pending federal investigation. Call immediately. David Stern, attorney. Marcus shot upright, his hangover forgotten. Victoria, wake up. She stirred slowly, then bolted upright when she saw his face. What's wrong? Something's happening. Something big. Marcus's hands shook as he called his lawyer back. David Stern answered on the first ring. Marcus, where the hell have you been? The FBI raided your offices at 6 a.m. They've seized all financial records going back 5 years. The FBI? Marcus's voice cracked. For what? Embezzlement, tax evasion, money laundering. And that's just the start. They have evidence of fraudulent contracts, bribery of city officials, and violation of federal labor laws. Marcus stumbled toward the window, his legs unsteady. That's impossible. I've been careful. Everything was legal, not according to their evidence. Marcus, they know about the offshore accounts. They know about the shell companies. They know about the workers you've been paying under minimum wage while claiming full salaries on tax documents. Victoria grabbed her purse, her face pale. I need to go home. This sounds bad. You're not going anywhere, Marcus snapped, then returned the phone. David, fix this. I don't care what it costs. I can't fix this, his lawyer said grimly. Whoever tipped them off gave them everything. Bank records, employee testimonies, recorded conversations. It's like someone handed them a complete roadmap to destroy you. The penthouse door exploded open as federal agents swarmed in, weapons drawn. Marcus Blackwood, FBI, you're under arrest. Victoria screamed and dove behind the couch. Marcus dropped his phone, his mouth falling open in shock. You have the right to remain silent, Agent Rodriguez began, snapping handcuffs around Marcus's wrists. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. This is insane, Marcus shouted. I'm a respected businessman. You can't just... Actually, we can, Agent Rodriguez said calmly. We have warrants for your arrest, your assets, and your girlfriend they're hiding behind the furniture. Victoria's head popped up, her eyes wide with terror. Me? What did I do? Victoria Sterling, you're under arrest for embezzlement, conspiracy to commit fraud, and accessory to tax evasion. As they dragged Victoria to her feet, she turned to Marcus with pure hatred in her eyes. This is your fault. You said everything was legal. I thought it was. Marcus protested as they led him toward the door. Someone set us up. Someone's been feeding them information. Agent Rodriguez smiled grimly. Oh, we had an excellent source. Very thorough, very detailed. They even provided us with recorded evidence of you discussing your crimes. Marcus's mind raced. Who could have betrayed him? His CFO? His board members? One of his employees? Then he remembered the hospital, the nurse who'd been listening, the old man, Sarah's uncle, standing in the shadows, watching everything. William Hartwell, he whispered, the pieces finally clicking together. What did you say? Agent Rodriguez asked. Nothing, Marcus muttered, but his blood had turned to ice. As they shoved him into the back of the FBI van, his phone buzzed one last time. A news alert. Federal Judge William Hartwell announces special task force for white-collar crime. The photo showed Sarah's uncle in his black robes, looking distinguished and powerful behind the bench of the highest court in the state. Marcus felt like he was going to vomit. Oh, God. Oh, no. Oh, no, no, no. Victoria sat across from him in the van, tears streaming down her face. Who is William Hartwell? Why did you say that name? Sarah's uncle, Marcus whispered, his voice barely audible. The man from the restaurant. The one I called Nobody. Victoria's face went white. The old man who helped Sarah? What about him? Marcus laughed, but it sounded like a sob. He's a federal judge. One of the most powerful men in the justice system. And I called his family trailer trash. The van stopped at the federal courthouse, and Marcus could see news crews already gathering. Someone had tipped off the media. Someone wanted this arrest to be as public and humiliating as possible. Mr. Blackwood, Agent Rodriguez said as they prepared to walk him to the crowd of reporters, you should know that your wife Sarah is doing much better. The baby's fine too, strong and healthy. Marcus looked up with a spark of hope. Maybe Sarah would help him. Maybe she'd forgive him if he apologized. She's also been granted full emergency custody of your assets, pending the divorce proceedings. Agent Rodriguez continued with a smile. Seems like she has excellent legal representation now. The courthouse doors opened, and camera flashes exploded like lightning. Marcus could hear reporters shouting questions, but their voices seemed to come from underwater as they dragged him up the courthouse steps. He caught sight of a familiar figure sitting in the back of a black sedan. Sarah sat in the passenger seat, her hand resting protectively on her belly. Beside her, Judge William Hartwell watched Marcus's perp walk with the cold satisfaction of perfect justice. Marcus had destroyed his own life with his cruelty, and the man he'd humiliated was just getting started. The real punishment was still to come. 6 months later, Marcus Blackwood sat in shackles at the defendant's table, his expensive suits replaced by an orange jumpsuit. His once perfect hair was unkempt, his face gaunt from months in federal custody. The courtroom was packed with reporters, victims, and curious onlookers who'd followed the case since the viral restaurant videos. Judge William Hartwell entered through his private chambers, his black robes flowing like the wings of justice itself. The bailiff's voice rang out, all rise for the Honorable Judge William Hartwell presiding. Marcus's new court-appointed lawyer, his assets had been seized to pay his victims, whispered urgently in his ear, remember, show remorse. The judge might consider that judge, Marcus hissed, is the man whose family I humiliated. He's going to destroy me. That's exactly why we filed for recusal. His lawyer replied nervously, but the appeals court denied it, said there was no evidence of bias. Judge Hartwell settled into his chair with the calm authority of a man who'd waited 40 years for this moment. His steel-gray eyes found Marcus immediately, and his slight smile was colder than winter. We are here today for the criminal trial of Marcus Blackwood, the judge announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the packed courtroom. Mr. Blackwood stands accused of 17 federal crimes, including embezzlement, tax fraud, and conspiracy. Marcus scanned the gallery and felt his heart stop. Sarah sat in the front row, radiant and healthy, cradling a beautiful baby girl with dark hair and perfect tiny fingers. His daughter, the child he'd wished would die. She was alive. She was perfect. and she was looking at him like he was a stranger. District Attorney Rebecca Chin stood to address the jury, her opening statement precise and devastating. Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence will show that Marcus Blackwood is not the successful businessman he pretended to be. He is a criminal who stole from his employees, defrauded the government, and abused his pregnant wife in the most public, humiliating way possible. The prosecution's first witness was Jennifer, the hospital nurse who'd recorded Marcus's cruel words. Her testimony was clear and damning. He said, and I quote, "It might be better she lost the baby. The divorce will be cleaner without a kid involved." Jennifer read from transcript, her voice steady despite the horrific words. The jury shifted uncomfortably. Several members glanced at Sarah holding her healthy daughter, their expressions hardening with disgust. Did Mr. Blackwood know you were recording this conversation? Chin asked. No. He was drunk and assumed I was just a hospital worker who couldn't do anything to him. His exact words. Marcus wanted to object, but his lawyer held him back. There was no point. The recording was crystal clear. The restaurant witnesses came next, one by one. The maitre d' who tried to intervene, the waiter who called the police, the other diners who watched in horror as Marcus slapped his pregnant wife. He said her family was trailer trash, testified Mrs. Patterson, an elderly woman who'd been dining 3 tables away. He said she was worthless and pathetic. I've never seen anyone treat their wife so cruelly. Then came the moment Marcus had been dreading. The prosecution played the viral videos on the courtroom's large screens. Every slap, every cruel word, every moment of Sarah's humiliation was displayed in high definition for the jury to see. The courtroom was silent, except for Sarah's quiet sobs on the recording. Several jury members wiped their eyes. One woman looked away completely, unable to watch. Your Honor, Chin announced, our final witness needs no introduction. The courtroom doors opened, and Victoria Sterling walked in wearing a simple blue dress and no makeup. Gone was the confident mistress who flaunted her affair. In her place sat a broken woman who'd lost everything. Marcus's mouth fell open. Victoria, what are you doing? She wouldn't look at him as she was sworn in. Her voice was barely a whisper when she began to speak. Mr. Blackwood and I had an affair for 8 months, she testified, her hand shaking. He told me his marriage was just a business arrangement. He said Sarah meant nothing to him. Did he discuss harming his wife or unborn child? Chin asked gently. Victoria finally looked at Marcus, her eyes filled with hatred. Multiple times. He said the pregnancy was a trap. He wished Sarah would have a miscarriage so the divorce would be easier. You lying bitch. Marcus exploded, jumping to his feet. You're the one who suggested getting rid of the baby. Judge Hartwell's gavel cracked like thunder. Mr. Blackwood, you will remain silent, or you will be removed from this courtroom. Victoria's testimony continued for 2 devastating hours. She detailed Marcus's financial crimes, his abuse of employees, his plans to frame others for his embezzlement. In exchange for her cooperation, she'd received a plea deal for minimal prison time. He said judges were all corrupt and could be bought, Victoria concluded. He bragged about having connections that would protect him from any consequences. Judge Hartwell leaned forward slightly. Did he mention any judges by name? Yes, Your Honor. After we left the hospital that night, he said Judge William Hartwell was just another pathetic relative who couldn't touch someone as powerful as him. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Marcus felt the walls closing in around him. As the trial concluded, Judge Hartwell prepared to deliver his verdict. Marcus looked one last time at Sarah, holding their daughter, surrounded by family who actually loved her. He'd thrown away everything that mattered, and now he was about to pay the ultimate price. The judge's words would seal his fate forever. Judge William Hartwell stood behind his bench like an angel of vengeance, his voice carrying the weight of absolute justice. The packed courtroom held its breath as he prepared to deliver Marcus Blackwood's sentence. Mr. Blackwood. The judge began, his steel-gray eyes boring into the broken man before him. In 40 years on this bench, I have seen many criminals, but few have displayed the level of cruelty, arrogance, and contempt for human dignity that you have shown. Marcus stared at his shackled hands, No longer the confident CEO who'd humiliated his pregnant wife in front of 50 witnesses. His empire was gone. His mistress had betrayed him. His freedom was about to vanish forever. "You call my family trailer trash," Judge Hartwell continued, his voice never rising but cutting like a blade. "You wished death upon your own unborn child. You stole from your employees and mocked the very system of justice you thought could never touch you." Sarah sat in the front row, her 6-month-old daughter sleeping peacefully in her arms. The baby's name was Hope, a name Marcus had never bothered to ask about. She wore a simple black dress, but her presence commanded more respect than Marcus had ever earned. "Therefore," Judge Hartwell announced, "on 17 counts of federal crimes, I sentence you to 25 years in federal prison without possibility of parole." The courtroom erupted. Reporters scribbled frantically. Camera flashes exploded. Marcus's knees buckled, and his court-appointed lawyer had to hold him upright. Additionally, the judge continued over the chaos. "All remaining assets will be liquidated to compensate your victims. Your company will be restructured under new leadership to ensure the workers you exploited receive justice." Marcus looked up with hollow eyes. What new leadership? Judge Hartwell's smile was sharp as winter. "Blackwood Industries has been purchased and will now operate under the name Hartwell Holdings. The new CEO is someone who actually cares about treating employees with dignity." Sarah stood slowly, shifting her daughter to one arm while extending her other hand toward Marcus. For a moment, he thought she was offering forgiveness. Then he saw what she held: the keys to his former office, his former life, his former empire. "Hello, Marcus," she said quietly, her voice carrying across the silent courtroom. "I believe these belong to me now." The transformation was stunning. Gone was the trembling, broken woman from the restaurant. In her place stood a confident businesswoman who'd spent 6 months learning everything about the company Marcus had built on lies and cruelty. "You can't be serious," Marcus whispered. "You don't know anything about running a business." Sarah's laugh was music compared to Victoria's bitter cackle. "Actually, I have an MBA from Stanford. You never bothered to ask about my education because you assumed I was as stupid as you claimed." The bailiffs moved to escort Marcus away, but he fought against their grip, desperation making him wild. "This isn't justice. This is revenge. He's her uncle. It's not legal. Every decision in this case has been reviewed by federal oversight," Judge Hartwell said calmly. 3 separate judicial panels have confirmed that justice has been served according to the law. Your conviction stands on evidence, not family connections. As they dragged Marcus toward the door, he caught one last glimpse of Sarah. She was surrounded by the employees he'd underpaid and mistreated. People now looked at her with genuine respect and gratitude. "The company picnic is next month," she was telling them softly. "Full benefits start immediately, and everyone gets the back pay Marcus stole from you." Marcus screamed as the courtroom doors closed behind him, but his voice was swallowed by the cheers of people celebrating their freedom from his tyranny. Underscore 6 months later, Marcus sat in his federal prison cell, staring at a newspaper article through the bars. The headline read, "Hartwell Holdings reports record profits under new leadership." The photo showed Sarah at a ribbon-cutting ceremony, her daughter on her hip, surrounded by employees whose lives she'd transformed. The company that had once existed to feed Marcus's ego now provided living wages, health benefits, and dignity to over 3,000 workers. His cellmate, a white-collar criminal named Peterson, peered over his shoulder. "That your ex-wife?" "Former wife," Marcus corrected bitterly. "She took everything." "Looks like she earned it," Peterson observed, reading the article. "Says here she's donated $2 million to domestic violence shelters. That's class." Marcus crumpled the newspaper and threw it across the cell. But even in prison, he couldn't escape the truth. Every day, guards would mention news about Hartwell Holdings. Every week, fellow inmates would share stories about family members who'd found good jobs at Sarah's company. The woman he'd called worthless had become one of the most respected business leaders in the state. The family he'd mocked as trailer trash now controlled the very courts and companies that shaped the city's future. His daughter, Hope, would grow up never knowing poverty, never knowing shame, never knowing the cruelty her father had inflicted. She would inherit a legacy of justice instead of exploitation. As Marcus lay on his narrow prison cot, staring at the concrete ceiling, he finally understood the price of his arrogance. He possessed everything: wealth, power, a loving wife, a beautiful child, and he'd thrown it all away for the fleeting pleasure of cruelty. Judge William Hartwell had given him exactly what he deserved. Not revenge, justice. Perfect, poetic, devastating justice. The last thing Marcus heard before sleep claimed him was the sound of his daughter's laughter echoing from a news report down the hallway. Free and happy in a world where a father could never hurt her again. Justice had been served, and it tasted sweeter than any victory he'd ever known.